Greetings and welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Today we are looking at a chapter that's part of the book of Daniel, and if you have any Bible that is before the early 1900s, then odds are you have this chapter. It's the chapter called Susanna. So there's two that are kind of considered apocryphal in modern times, but they've always been part of the collective scriptures up until, like I just mentioned, the early 1900s. One is called Susanna, and the other one is called Bel and the Dragon, or Bel and the Serpent. Today we're going to be reading Susanna. Now again, this is a chapter attached to the book of Daniel that's always been part of the scriptures. It's quoted and commentated on by early church fathers. One example would be Ignatius, who was a disciple of John. He talks about the story here of Susanna, commenting on how Daniel received the Holy Spirit at the age of 12. The book of Susanna has been viewed by the ancient church as a preamble to the rest of the story. So a preamble is kind of like an introductory statement, or sometimes you'll have a preamble in an important document that will explain the purpose of an underlining philosophy of the document that you're about to read. Susanna is also viewed as a parable, describing basically Susanna herself would be representative of God's people or the church, and then the two elders would be representative of kind of like the powers of darkness. And so that's kind of how it is viewed. And so that's how we view it. That's how it's always been viewed. That's how I view it. And so we're going to read this morning, and I think you'll be blessed by this interesting story. So if you had like an Orthodox study Bible, it would have Susanna, then the first, and then the 12 chapters of the book of Daniel, and then it would be capped off with Bel and the Serpent. And so I believe that gets it across. But look, the theme of our study for the book of Daniel, it was the sovereignty of God, right? And I think we see that in this story as well, which would make sense for a preamble. All right, enough rambling. I don't feel like I need to defend reading this. Again, I gave you the important headline points about it. So let's see what it has to say. Susanna. Verse 1. There was a man living in Babylon, and his name was Jehoiakim. He took a wife whose name was Susanna, the daughter of Hilkiah, a very beautiful woman, and one who feared the Lord. Her parents were righteous and taught their daughter according to the law of Moses. Jehoiakim was exceedingly wealthy, with a spacious garden adjoining his house, and the Jews came to him because he was the most honored of them all. In that year 2 elders from the people were appointed as judges, concerning whom the Lord said, "Lawlessness came forth out of Babylon," from the elders who were judges, who were supposed to govern the people. These men were frequently at Jehoiakim's house, and all who had judgments came to them. Now, when the people departed at midday, Susanna would go into her husband's garden to walk. So the 2 elders would see her going in and walking about every day, and they desired her. They turned away their heart and averted their eyes from looking to heaven and from remembering righteous judgments. Both were pierced to the heart for her, but they did not tell each other their pain. So please note, we have this woman named Susanna, exceedingly beautiful. She's also beautiful inside, and she fears the Lord. She's married to a rich, successful man named Jehoiakim. And he has this garden attached to his house, and she goes out every day to enjoy the garden. But these two elders who are supposed to be judges, who are supposed to be righteous, decide to kind of not look towards heaven anymore. Instead, they want to indulge in their lust after Susanna. So they go out in the garden to watch her. So every day they eagerly watch. Actually right here, let's start with verse 11. They were ashamed to inform one another of their desire because they wished to have relations with her. So every day they eagerly watched to see her. Finally they said to one another, "Let us go home, for it is time for midday meal." And going out, they parted from each other. But turning back, they met again. And when they pressured each other for the reason, they confessed their desire. Together they arranged for a time that they could find her alone. Then it came to pass, while they were waiting for an opportune day, she went in as before with only 2 maids. She also wished to bathe in the garden, for it was hot. For no one was there except the 2 elders, who hid themselves and were watching her. She said to her maids, "Bring me oil and ointments, and shut the doors of the garden, that I may bathe." They did as she said, and closed the garden doors, and they went out by the side doors to bring the things commanded, but did not see the elders because they were hidden. When the maids left, the 2 elders arose and ran to her, and said, "Look, the doors of the garden are closed, and no one will see us, and we desire you. Therefore, give us your consent and lie with us. If you do not, we will testify that a young man was with you, and because of this you sent your maids away from you." Then Susanna sighed deeply and said, "I am hemmed in on all sides, for if I do this thing, it is death for me. Yet if I do not, I will not escape your hands. But it is better for me not to do it and to fall into your hands than to sin against the Lord." So please note, awful creatures, right? So it's no longer good enough for them to just be watching her from afar, unbeknownst to her, because they're hiding in the garden so they can peep on her. They decide, nope, we're going to take her for ourselves. And so they try to blackmail her. They say, "Hey, you know what? We're the judges. The people are going to believe us, not you. You're going to lie with us, or we're going to tell them that we caught you with a young man." Susanna realizes that, well, she's kind of cornered here. What can she do? If she goes along with these men, she has to do this profane thing. If she doesn't, she's probably going to be executed for adultery that she didn't even commit, but they're the judges, so what to do? She says, "I'm going to take my chances with the Lord." And this is the beautiful thing about Susanna and the story, is that she's like, either way, I'm in trouble, but I'm not going to offend the Lord, so I'll take my chances. She's like, I'd rather have to fall into your hands than to sin against the Lord. Verse 24. Then Susanna cried out with a loud voice, and the 2 elders cried out against her. One of them ran and opened the garden doors, and when the household servants heard the cry in the garden, they rushed in by the side doors to see what had happened to her. So when the elders told their tale, the servants were deeply ashamed, for such a report had never been made about Susanna. Then it came to pass the next day, when the people assembled at the house of Jehoiakim, her husband, the 2 elders also came, full of their lawless purpose against Susanna to have her put to death. They said before all the people, "Send for Susanna, the daughter of Hilkiah, who is the wife of Jehoiakim." So they sent for her, and she came with her parents, her children, and all her kindred. Now Susanna was very desirable and beautiful to behold. However, she was veiled. Thus the lawless men commanded she be unveiled, so as to enjoy her beauty. But her friends and all who saw her wept. Then the two elders arose in the midst of the people and laid their hands upon her head. She wept and looked up to heaven, for her heart trusted in the Lord. The two elders said, as we were walking in the garden alone, this woman came in with two maids, closed the door of the garden, dismissed the maids. Then a young man who was hidden came to her and lay with her. Now we were in the corner of the garden and saw this lawlessness. So when we ran to them and saw them having relations, but we could not hold the man, for he was stronger than we. He opened the doors and rushed out. So we seized the woman and asked her who the young man was, but she was unwilling to tell us. Thus the assembly believed them, as they were elders and judges among the people. So they commended her to death. But Susanna cried out with a loud voice and said, O eternal God, who know both what is secret and all things before they come to be, you know these men testified against me falsely, and behold, I shall die. Though I did none of these things, they wickedly invented against me. The Lord heard her voice, and she was being led away to be put to death. God aroused the Holy Spirit of a young boy, whose name was Daniel. And he cried out with a loud voice, I am innocent of the blood of this woman. So all the people turned to him and said, What is this you said? Then he stood in their midst and said, Are you such fools, O sons of Israel? Without examination or knowledge of the evidence, have you condemned a daughter of Israel? Return to the palace of judgment, for these men testified against her falsely. So all the people returned with haste. So please note, when the Holy Spirit speaks, even if it speaks through a boy, the 12-year-old boy, in this case the prophet Daniel, as a 12-year-old, when the Holy Spirit speaks, people listen and obey. Susanna cries out, O eternal God, you know what happened. And God heard her voice, and she had been faithful all this time. And so he arouses the Holy Spirit within Daniel. And then Daniel, unable to control himself, overwhelmed by the Spirit, shouts out and condemns the foolishness of these people and says, You've done this falsely. And they just obey. It says they all returned with haste. Continue on. The elders said to him, Come, sit at our midst and inform us, for God gives you that privilege. Daniel then said to them, Separate them far from each other, and I will examine them. And when they separated from each other, he summoned one of them and said to him, You old man of evil days, now the sins you have committed in earlier days have come home. For you pronounce unjust judgments, condemn the innocent, and set the guilty free. Yet the Lord said, You shall not kill the innocent and the righteous. Now then, if indeed you saw her, tell me, under which tree did you see them being intimate with each other? He replied, Under the mastic tree. And Daniel said, Plainly, you lied against your own head. For even now the angel of God receives the sentence from God, and he shall cut you in two. Then he removed him and commanded them to bring the other. He said to him, You seed of Canaan, and not of Judah, beauty deceived you, and desire turned away your heart. This is how both of you deal with the daughters of Israel. They have been intimate with you through fear, but a daughter of Judah would not endure your lawlessness. Now then, tell me, under what tree did you catch them being intimate with each other? He replied, Under the evergreen oak. Daniel said to him, Plainly, you also lied against your own head, for the angel of God is waiting with his sword to cut you in two, that he may destroy both of you. Then the whole assembly cried out with a loud voice and blessed God who saves those who hope in him. So they rose up against the two elders, for Daniel convicted them out of their own mouth of bearing false witness. And they did to them the thing that they maliciously intended to do against their neighbor. For acting in accordance with the law of Moses, they put them to death. Therefore innocent blood was saved on that day. Hilkiah and his wife praised God for their daughter, and Jehoiakim, her husband, and all her kindred, because nothing shameful was found in her. Thus Daniel had a great reputation among the people from that day onward. And that, my friends, is the story of Susanna. It's a beautiful story. Now, you can take it as a literal story that happened, very possible. You could also kind of look at it from like the parable standpoint. One commentator says that Susanna is a type of the church, the bride of Christ, persecuted by the two elders. Which you can definitely see kind of how you can make that connection of Susanna representing God's people, representing the church. I just love how I really love that whole part where Daniel uses it's the Holy Spirit within Daniel, and just easily comes to the conclusion of how to determine if they're telling the truth. You also kind of hate how everybody's just willing to take the elders' word for, well, they're the elders. And of course, there's nothing new under the sun, is there? It's no different today. False judgment all the day long. Guilty go free. The most vile and terrible people on the planet who do the most awful, horrendous things continue to get away with it. Judges are paid off, lawyers are paid off, politicians are paid off. But God sees all of this. And it's important for us to be like Susanna in that our full trust and confidence is in God. I pray you've been blessed this morning. Thank you for listening. Please consider to pray for me and pray for the podcast. And for those of you who support this mission of truth, I'm extremely grateful. Thank you for being willing to make that happen. Peace and grace be with all of you. And until next time, God bless.